Hi there, welcome to Falling Up Radio. I'm really excited today to get to our guest, but first I'm going to mention a couple of things. This is January 2019, and I've officially called this month Yoga Month because we're going to have a whole bunch of different yoga guests on telling us about their experience and how they transformed and how they overcame different things in their life through the practice of yoga. We really focus on, really helping people discover their dreams, who they are, overcoming things, and with the idea that, to really have a good life, we have to fall down first. And all of us struggle. All of us have those life challenges that go on. So we're talking about how to do that. We're bringing you the best experts how to do that. Sometimes it's edgy, sometimes it gets pretty wild, sometimes it might even seem impossible. But we just ask you to give it a shot. And I want to tell you, all my guests have personally burned and crashed where I wouldn't have them on because I want crash and burns, Maybe it's just the excitement, the drama, I don't know. But, I've crashed and burned myself. And if you go to, there's a couple different places, but if you just go to fallingupradio.com. If you're not watching this here already, you can get a free copy of my #1 book. And this is all about my crashing and burning and how I almost died and drank too much and they were going to cut off my legs and all this crazy stuff that happened. And, eventually I literally stumbled into yoga and recovered. So that's my little spiel to start out. But what I want to do now is I want to bring our guest in. Our guest is a very, very special woman. She has been in the yoga community for many, many years. I met her in 1998 when I went to the Bikram Yoga teacher training in Los Angeles, and she is one of the first 100 Bikram Yoga teachers in the world. And that's huge because I don't know how many there are now, but 18,000 teachers, and she's one of the first and got that one-on-one experience with Bikram on really learning what yoga is. But wait, not only did she go through the Bikram Yoga teacher training, she also went through Bikram's advanced training. She's one of the few people that also went through the advanced trainings that Bikram used to conduct. But wait, there's more. She's had like 5 other, really different but outstanding teacher trainings over the years. So she's highly adept in what she does. She's a true expert, a true yoga master. And here she is. She lives in a little town in Central Oregon, and I like to call her studio the biggest little studio in the world. Because she has this little teeny tiny studio, but these people flock to her to come to her studio. So let me introduce her now, my friend, Eva Vidal. Eva, hi.
Hi, Michael. Thank you for having me on your Falling Up radio show today.
Yeah, it's really great to have you here. And I really wanted you to be, again, really the first one of 5 yoga guests this month because of who you are and where you came from and the fact that you were one of the original Bikram Yoga teachers.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, so let's jump right into it. I know a little bit about your story, but, the listeners may not know who you are. So maybe briefly tell us who you are. I know you came from Oklahoma. And somehow you made it to Los Angeles, and then you made it up the West Coast to Oregon. So how'd you start yoga? Was something going on in your life, or what happened?
Well, Michael, I started yoga around 1992, and at that time in my life, I was a full-blown court reporter, paralegal. I was working in law firms and having a great life. However, I was a runner. Basically, I was a runner. I loved to do 5Ks, 10Ks. It was a great experience, but during all of that beating up of my body, I created and developed some sciatic nerve issues in my body that caused me a lot of pain, especially when I was sitting and working at my desk. You know, and so to try to remedy that, I started going to a chiropractor, and I was mentioning before that I joined a chiropractor like anybody would join a yoga class. I mean, I signed up, I was ready to go, so I was going 2 and 3 times a week.
So now, why were you going to this chiropractor? Was it the knees, or was it the back, or did you have herniated disc, or what was going on?
Yeah, that's a good question. I had a lot of tension in my neck, but mostly it was back pain. It was sciatic pain. So I would say back and hip, you know, in my hips. And so I would go to these chiropractors and they would do these adjustments on me. And then I felt like I could, you know, walk again and run again. And so that was the cycle I was on. Go to the chiropractor, run again. Go to the chiropractor, run again.
And how often were you going to the chiropractor?
So I was going 2 or 3 times a week, and I did this for a good, almost a decade, to be honest.
What?
Almost a decade. It was a really long time. Through most of my 20s, I went, and thank goodness I did, because it was very helpful, and that was my only alternative to medicine that I knew about at the time.
I mean, either you were running a lot, or you somehow, I mean, 2 to 3 times a week for 10 years is a long time to go to a chiropractor.
Yeah, I went to a chiropractor that long, but I was dedicated to it. They made me feel better.
You must have been in a lot of pain.
Yes, I was in a lot of pain, but I kept redoing it over and over again. I was not changing my movements. I was not changing my mindset or the actions. So it was just repetitive.
Yeah.
So
now, you had some other issues that came up as well. You know, I'll let you share as much of that as you would like. But where did that come in?
Well, simultaneously, I was developing what a lot of women are very familiar with called endometriosis. Endometriosis is a problem for women during our menstrual cycle, where we basically lose control of it, and there's a lot of excess flow in the body that is very painful. It's very painful in the back. It's very painful in the groins and in the hips. And so at that time, the remedy was to do surgery. So over a period of maybe 6 or 7 years, I probably had at least 5 of these endometriosis surgeries that were temporary. They were temporary. It kept coming back.
Yeah.
So I was.
Was that simultaneous with going to the chiropractor that you were experiencing this?
Yes, this was all happening in my 20s. I was running, I was going to the chiropractor, I was having sciatic nerve pain, and then this endometriosis, and all of this was going on in my body. I couldn't figure out what was happening, so I just kept going back to the doctor and getting surgeries and getting chiropractic adjustments. Those were the only things that were giving me relief that I knew about at the time.
Sure. And were you still in Oklahoma, or where were you?
I was in Southern California. I was in Orange County at the time, so there were some wonderful things happening in Southern California at that time. A lot of alternative remedies were showing up at that time, so I feel very grateful to be in an area where chiropractic was available.
And when your first yoga class, when did you step into your first yoga class, and what drove you there? I mean, did a friend bring you there, or how did you hear about it?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I was having also some emotional pain that was sort of a leftover from my teenage years. And I think that's pretty common for a lot of teenagers to experience some emotional pain. And it was still in my body at that time. And so I was So I was going to the chiropractor, I was going, having the endometriosis surgeries, but I was also trying to take care of my mind. So I was going to counseling too at the same time. And through my counseling sessions, I guess I became aware that I needed to make myself happy, basically. So I started trying to remember, when was the last time I was happy? What was I doing? How can I recreate that?
So without trying to be too personal, were you feeling anxiety and depression from your teenage years? And
I think I labeled it as depression. I think I would label it as a sadness, almost like a sadness that was stuck in my body. So I think the purpose of the counseling was trying to recall a time in my life that I didn't have that, and try to recreate that sensation. So ultimately, that was what I got out of counseling, was how can I recreate a happiness for myself. So
and when you walked into that first yoga class, were you still in counseling, and what type of yoga was it?
So when I decided that I was going to take matters into my own hands, and I let the counselor at that time know that would be my last session, one of the things that she said to me was very profound. It was very simple, and she's the one that said, well, try to remember when you were happy, and make that, part of who you are. Try to remember. So at that time, of course, I was born in the 60s, so in the 70s, Jack LaLanne was a big part of my life. He was someone that I always remember. Jane Fonda had all these great videos out at the time. I knew about aerobics and things like that. So from that mindset, or from that thought process, I was, well, I did gymnastics. So with the combination of all those kind of things, I just naturally went to find some information about stretching. So I was going to recreate this world of gymnastics on an adult level by doing deep stretching, and I ended up finding a book by Beryl Bindle Birch, and it changed my life. It was power yoga, basically, Ashtanga yoga, and it changed my life.
Yeah. So was she the first person that you went to, or where is the first place you went to a yoga class?
She was not. She was the first book that I read, and the book I still have it. It's tattered, it's marked, it's colored, it's everything. It was my Bible. The first yoga class that I went to was Yoga Works. Now, Yoga Works actually started in Los Angeles, and they had a second branch in Orange County. So I would show up to these classes. They were Ashtanga classes. I'd already knew it because I studied Beryl Bindle Birch's Power Yoga book. So by the way,
I read that book too, and I've been to her classes as well.
I still yet to go to her personally, but she's still a mentor of mine. I love that book. It taught me word for word how to breathe, everything. It was amazing. So I went to Yoga Works, and met my first yoga teacher. Her name was Dawn. And of course, you never forget your first yoga teacher. So she changed my life.
And then she was teaching Ashtanga. Was it more traditional Ashtanga, or? It
was very traditional. It was one of the things that really appealed to me, the way that Dawn taught it was, if I can say this word, she didn't dumb it down. Like the whole time, it was all in Sanskrit. It was taught exactly the way it was taught to her. It was very traditional, and there was no holding back. There was just no holding back. And so I didn't want to be her, but I wanted to be like her. I just in mind and body and presence. And I was in the corporate world, and I was just being open and introduced to this whole other piece of the world, and I wanted some of it.
So it sounds like you had like this immediate connection to it.
I would say it was immediate, and I felt like I kind of found my purpose, of how to heal myself through movement. It made me feel better than anything else I had done that far. So, you know, now the yoga.
Yeah, now the yoga. So how long did you go to her before you tried some other type of yoga?
So I was a student with Dawn for at least maybe 4 years. And at that same studio is where I met my second yoga teacher, and her name was Kim. And Kim is still near and dear to my heart. She introduced me to the Bikram Yoga. And of course, she did not have her own studio at the time. So when I first learned Bikram Yoga, it was not in the heat. So this was a very powerful young lady who came out of Bikram training and did everything she possibly could to spread the message and get people on board with this Bikram Yoga. And I was interested, but I was still very much attached to my Ashtanga yoga. So there was a little bit of an overlap there.
Sure. Were you at that point, were you still going to chiropractors and still having surgeries, or had that already gone away?
The surgeries had gone away because when I was practicing with Ashtanga for those 4 years, being on my stomach, a lot of the postures that like the cobra poses and the Dhanurasana, the bow poses, the poses that were putting pressure on my abdomen, you know, were actually healing me from that. Simultaneously, I did a huge dietary change, and I became a vegetarian at that time. And so the elimination of alcohol, I think when you first start yoga, because I was a partier like everybody else, you know, there was less drinking, there was less animal protein, there was more yoga, and there was more pressure. I mean, so just the combination. So suddenly, a little bit at a time, I actually did wean myself off of all surgeries and all chiropractic, although I'm a true believer in chiropractic, but I just didn't need it anymore.
Did you feel at one point, like with the chiropractor, with the surgeries, that, I don't know if this is the right term, I don't want to lead you to anything, but was it almost like you were going to have to live with that the rest of your life?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And I didn't want to feel that way. I didn't want to live like that. I think intuitively, I knew it wasn't necessary. It wasn't necessary, you know, and if I could just find the key to my body and the key to what worked for me, that I could fix it. And I believe that.
Yeah.
And I think,
so would you say in the first 4 or 5 years of your yoga practice, you're able to let go of all of that and essentially through the yoga heal your body?
absolutely, absolutely. I think just by, you know, after being a running, and running's fine too, you know, but that was my repetitive movement, I guess, if you will. So I think when I started doing yoga, it was more of an all over body. It was a whole body, holistic, joints, tendons, you know, every muscles, skeletal system, all of my nervous system, all the systems I think were being worked. So it was healing me from the inside out versus trying to fix it from the outside in.
Yeah.
So, you know.
So how long had you been practicing yoga, whether it was Ashtanga or starting with the Bikram, when you realized you wanted to like become a teacher or do more yoga?
So when I decided to make a lifestyle change and really, I don't really recall thinking, oh, I'm going to be a yoga teacher, or I want to be a yoga teacher. What I wanted was to immerse myself in yoga. You know, I wanted to be around like-minded people, and I wanted to learn, basically. I wanted to learn. I wanted a bigger piece of life, basically. So when my teacher, Kim, asked me to teach one day, you know, I just couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it. And I felt like that, that if I was going to teach, that I wanted to do this, you know, go to proper training.
And she wanted you to teach a Bikram class.
she wanted me to teach a Bikram class. I was not certified at the time, and being the type of person that I am, I felt like I needed to go through this training. So of course, right away, I went up to Los Angeles. I drove up there and I met Bikram, and it was very dynamic, but even then, I still had my love for Ashtanga, and I can still remember sitting in a little sandwich shop looking at both Ashtanga training and Bikram training, and I was truly on the fence. I loved them both. I loved them.
What, do you remember what year this was? Or
this was probably 1996.
96.
96.
Yeah. And what was it? I mean, I was kind of in the same boat. That's interesting because, you know, I did a lot of Ashtanga initially as well.
Yes.
And then started doing the hot yoga and thought it was hot, sweaty, and stupid kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And would go back to Ashtanga and would do that more, but found myself gravitating more and more to the hot yoga because it did something different to my body than what I was experiencing in Ashtanga. And I felt more healing for myself beginning to emerge. You know, it wasn't right away. It took a little bit, but it came out. So what was it sitting in that little cafe? You got Ashtanga and Bikram on one side. What was the trigger for you to go to Bikram?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say most of it was the heat. It was the heat. I agree with you, Michael, or I had a similar situation where there was something about the heat with my body that opened me. It opened my heart. It opened more than just my pores or my shoulder joints and everything. It did all of that and then some. It opened my heart. And when I went to explore it, so I didn't have really a place to go to really explore the Ashtanga training. But I had an actual bricks and mortars and a real guide that I could go and visit. So when I went to visit Bikram and I took a class up there, it was the community. It was the heat. It was the community. It was the people. And
was that at Wilshire and Robertson there in LA? Is that where you first went?
Yes, Wilshire and Robertson. Yeah. Exactly.
Above the furniture store. I remember that.
Above the furniture store, noisy, smoggy, loud, smelly.
And just a brief story. I remember once being in that studio and telling Bikram, I said, it's awfully noisy here. Wouldn't it be nice if you had a quiet studio someplace, you know, someplace quiet? I said, oh, no, noisy, much better. He said, learn to still your mind in the noise. You can do it anywhere.
Right.
Yeah.
And also, you know, when I went there were people from all walks of life, and I never thought of myself as being sheltered, but when I got around the Bikram community, there were people from all over the world, and the aroma of the practice itself, and then Indian
the sweat. You mean the sweat?
The sweat, and then of course, you know, that particular studio had a kitchen, and so, you know, there were the Indian food smell. It was just sort of a whole package for me that I just had to have more. I had to have more. I really felt like I needed to leave the comfort of what I had, you know, of my normal life, what I would call my normal life, and just, you know, for that next 3 or 4 months, just see what happens.
Yeah.
You know, see what happens.
So did you totally stop the Ashtanga at that point, or were you still doing a little bit?
That's a good question. I never stopped Ashtanga. I still will sometime in my personal practice, it'll come out of me still to this day. But while I was actually doing the Bikram training, I did stop. And I only focused, I stopped everything. You know, I didn't drink. I practiced celibacy during that time. I got off caffeine. I got off sugar. And I only, you know, I gave 100% of my time, focus, and energy in that practice and in that training. And for me, that paid off. And I also showed up for myself every day. For instance, I got front and center. I would just go straight in front of Bikram every class, no matter how sore or how pitiful I felt that day, you know. So I didn't hold back in that training.
And when you were in that training, did you actually live at the studio?
I lived in a couple of places. I stayed there a couple of times. I actually stayed, I rented a place for a little while. I stayed in my car once or twice. You know, I was in it for the long run. Like, it didn't matter. You know, suddenly my comforts weren't as important as what I was gaining at the time. The whole experience was uncomfortable. The whole experience was uncomfortable. But the most uncomfortable thing is being in a house. I think there was a house rented in Beverly Hills or somewhere there, a Bel Air or something, and there were about, I think, 30 something of us, and we were all in that same house, and I almost lost my mind. So that
because of all the people. Yeah.
All the people. So I struggled with that and didn't stay. So I did leave that situation. And again, I stayed in my car a couple of times. I rented a place a couple of times. I had some friends up there and I would house sit if I could. So I kind of moved around a little bit. It was a little bit unstable, but that was part of my process.
Yeah.
You know, how grounded can I be while being unstable?
Yeah. Now, Bikram too has been known to have a pretty strong presence and style in the way that he teaches and pushes those in training. How did you like that? Were you resistant to it? Where were you with that?
I loved it.
You loved it?
I loved it. The first day, so, you know, the first class that I ever took with Bikram, when he walked into the room and we all stood up and he said, toes on the line. Everybody touch your toes on the line. You know, that's, you know, when I had that, I'm shaking, I'm going to cry. It was one of those I did cry. It was one of those experiences of letting go, but also being excited about this discipline. Like, I heard the discipline in his voice. I felt, we took a class with the general public. So there were all of us new people there, but there were also people who had been practicing with him for a long time.
You know, I got to stop you there for a moment, because Bikram is also known as kind of the yogi to the stars. So who was showing up when you were around?
Let's see, Raquel Welch.
I mean, let us know.
The person that stands out the most to me was Raquel Welch, because, you know, I'm a woman, she's a woman, and she was gorgeous, you know, and, you know, she was someone I grew up watching, you know, so to have her, you know, next to me or in front of me, you know, suffering just like me, you know, was a reality. You know, it was real. It was real for me. So,
yeah. Who else besides Raquel?
The basketball player, Kareem was in there, and you know, and of course you can't believe how tall the guy is. Yeah, you know, just amazing. And let's see, I don't really recall.
Candace or Martin Short.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. They didn't stand out to me like, say, Raquel did, or you know, Kareem. But you know, they were all, excuse me?
Shirley MacLaine.
Shirley MacLaine, exactly. Yeah, they were all in there. I forgot about that. So.
Yeah. And they were probably awestruck about you.
Well, I don't know about that, but I sure gave 100% though, and it was a wonderful experience. But I just knew instantly that I was about to get a discipline that I wanted, but I also had fear about, you know, there was a nervousness in it because I wanted to live up to it. I wanted to live up to whatever was inside of me. I wanted it to come out. I wanted to experience that, you know, so it's a very emotional, you know, to be in front of a master, and you feel transparent. You feel transparent. Yeah.
Now it's interesting because, I mean, although there's the physical aspect of discipline of coming up, putting your toes on the line, doing the yoga in a certain way, the discipline is still very much a internal practice and maybe more on the mind side of the mind-body interaction, right?
I agree.
What I heard you say was about that craving, that discipline. What did that discipline give you emotionally, perhaps, that you didn't have before?
I think on an emotional level that I couldn't change whatever it was that I was emotional about. I couldn't change it, but like the old saying goes, I could change the way I looked at it, the way that I perceived it, and the way that I was going to carry it through the rest of my life. That was important to me. When I realized I couldn't change it, there's sort of an empty feeling until you get to where you accept it. But I think there's something beyond acceptance. I think that, it just gave me the ability to know that as I went on through my life, it was going to soften, and I would be able to manipulate it, so to speak, in a way that I could live with it.
Yeah. So was it almost like, some people would say this, that the problems that we perceive that we have really just kind of go away when we focus on something else. And like in your case, it sounds like that discipline gave you something that allowed those perceived problems to just begin to go away.
Yeah, they begin to go away because, when the mind starts, you quit blaming yourself, you quit, and I'm not saying not taking responsibility, that's different. Yeah. So you can take responsibility, but not feel blamed or shame. Shame was a bigger issue to me than blame. So I think so having tools to dissolve those emotional things that drain you day after day after day after day. So yes, it gave me something else to think about rather than being on that cycle, that mental cycle of just repeating it in my head every day. Yeah. So that was a revelation for me. I was early 30s, so.
Yeah. So keep going. I know one of the things, you went to the Bikram training in '97, and Bikram wrote his first book, and it's got a red cover on it. Yeah. And I know you are also featured in that book. What was that experience like?
Well, Bikram had the red book, and he also duplicated or wrote a second one, the blue book. And I'm actually in the blue book.
Oh, the blue book, right.
Yeah. So that was a wonderful experience. I felt very honored to be in the book. Again, going back to my training, I was 100% in. I was 100% in. I showed up on time. I got in the front row, and I felt like I got acknowledged for my commitment to that training and to yoga at large. And so Bikram, one of the ways that Bikram acknowledged me was when we did our graduation, he asked me to be in the performance that we had on stage at the end, which was lovely because I got to do it for the general public. It was the first time I really performed yoga for the general public, so I felt honored to do that. Then at that ceremony—
Was that at Olympic Park?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes, in Beverly Hills, I believe it was.
Yep.
And my mom was there, and my boyfriend was there, and all the people that I loved was there, and so that was really special for them to see me go through that, have that experience and change, So during that ceremony, unbeknownst to me, Bikram at that time would give out trophies for outstanding postures or outstanding students. So I was able to receive and accept gracefully a trophy from him for outstanding postures. So that was a really surprise. I didn't know that was coming, but I was really excited about that. And then a couple of months after that, he was doing some photos for his book, in the Blue Book. And so, you know, he gives me a call and asks me to stop over to his house, and that's what I did. And there was a big photographers there, and we just went out by his swimming pool, as you know, that the famous swimming pool, and we just did the postures, and he just sat and walked me through them all and said, do this, right shoulder here, left shoulder back, calm down more, relax, you know. And then so it was fantastic. And so I got a little mention in the book. So
Yeah.
I think I have 3 postures in the book. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that must have felt really good. So from there, you went through the training, and you opened. Eventually, you had 2 studios. Is that right, in Southern California?
So after my training, I met a gentleman who was opening his 2nd studio in Seattle. So I had a great experience right out of training. I got to go and basically manage his studio while he built his 2nd one. So I got some really good training as far as the business goes. Then I ultimately went back down to Orange County and worked for my original teacher, Kim. I loved her. So I was still working with her. But as an aside, I opened a small little shop and did privates and one-on-one and small groups, one-on-one and small groups. And so that was kind of my first studio. And then the 2nd studio I actually bought from Kim. She had the original Bikram Yoga studio in Orange County. And then I got married and owned that studio with my husband. And then this is my 3rd studio. So 2 of them were Bikram studios, and one of them actually was just more of a therapy, you know, where I got referrals from doctors, and so we would do yoga therapy.
Yeah. So you were in California, you had these studios, and then you moved, I believe, to the Eugene area.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you worked at the studio over there?
Yeah, so I worked with Amy at the Bikram Yoga College of India in Eugene. Wonderful experience. Different, you know, it's different. That was a great experience for me, because one of the things, you know, we get in these ruts as teachers like anything else. And I know Amy would ask me to do things that I had never done before, especially after being a business owner. I didn't do anything I didn't want to do. You know, I was my own boss. So you know, if there was something I was afraid of, or for instance, demonstrating while teaching, that was something that I wasn't good at. I didn't know how to do it. I didn't want to do it. I had resistance to it. So one of the requirements was that we had to do that X amount of times for X amount of classes, you know, to teach and demonstrate. It was horrifying. But it worked.
Yeah.
You know, it definitely put me to get over some fears. So kudos to Amy.
Now, full disclosure to all those that listen or listening is I tried for several years to get you to move to the Bend area and to come to work at my studio. It probably took 2 years, maybe even 3. I can't remember. And then eventually you decided to move over here.
That's correct. Yeah, so it took 2 years. I know we had at least 2, maybe 3 interviews. Yeah, I really didn't have an interest in Bend at the time. The only thing I knew about it was snow. And the biggest interest I had was my husband was into cycling at the time and really wanted to cycle Bend. Who doesn't want to cycle Bend? If you're a cyclist, you want to cycle Bend, right? Yep. So that kind of resonated with me. So ultimately we came, and that was also a great experience working with you as well, Michael. And same thing happened actually in your studio, where I know a lot of times where you gave us exercises to to teach a class this way, teach a class sitting up, teach a class sitting down, giving corrections, all the different exercises that we went through, that I probably wouldn't have done on my own. So, and I did have resistance to all of that, if you remember, but ultimately breaking out of our shells and trying different things is how I think we ultimately find our yoga voice, our teaching voice. So I'm grateful for all those experiences.
Well, it's interesting. I heard you say that the breaking out of the shells as a teacher, and I heard you say that when you came to your practice that part of what you were doing is breaking out of your shell. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So there's like different levels of that breakout, or whatever you want to call it.
Well, there's different levels, because I think for me, one of the things that I'm aware of and crave is authenticity. And I don't believe I've been authentic my whole life. I maybe not be now, for all I know, but I'm trying to be.
Yeah.
And I know we have to emulate before we can innovate. But there comes a time in your life where you just have to innovate. You have to, be authentic, and that's difficult. I find that very difficult. The yoga has helped me with that.
Yeah.
Even getting on the podium, was a huge thing for me. It was a huge thing for me. Speaking in public, speaking on this video, all those things. But yoga kind of gives you courage. Maybe, it kind of gives you courage, instead of taking a shot of courage. You can, you use yoga for courage and to open up your body and just try to be more authentic. I have to work on that every day, Michael. Yeah,
is that courage and being authentic and all that?
Being authentic and using my voice, still to this day, I'm very inspired by all of my yoga teachers. And, when I get online, or if I'm, this is stuff I read, so I often want to move away from that and write my own stuff, say my own stuff. But what do I, and that just being authentic, and it's not easy.
Yeah.
It's not easy. So.
Now I consider you to be really quite insightful for many reasons, but the one that I'm going to mention right now is somehow you were insightful enough to snag the name hotyogastudio.com many years ago. And you haven't told this to me, but that's probably $1 million name. Really, today, hotyogastudio.com is got to be extremely valuable. If somebody came and gave you $1 million today for your name, would you take it and rename your studio something else?
No.
No?
No, for $1 million, I probably would. That's an interesting story. I'd like to take credit for it, but the story is that my the original owner of Bikram Yoga College of India, Costa Mesa, my first teacher, again, Kim, she and her husband decided to change the name when they owned it. Mm-hmm. And they did a big survey out to all the students. And I remember they were giving, I can't remember what the prize was, if it was free yoga or money or whatever, but there was sort of a survey, and everybody got to put in their ideas of what the yoga studio should be called. And I don't remember who won. I just remember that's how the process happened, but that's what they came up with. And I didn't like it at the time. I'm like, but so when I then bought the studio, I then acquired that name.
Well, that was a smart move. It was worth probably just the name.
Yes. And so when I bought the studio, actually, I bought the whole thing, so luckily I had that. Well, I never changed it because it did grow on me. And as time went on, it did, come to me that, wow, this is a great name. But I still didn't know how great it was until a lot of Bikram studios then became Hot Yoga Studios. Yeah. And so now I get emails and calls and things, for people interested. If you ever don't want it, please contact me and things.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
Have you ever had the name appraised?
I have not. Should we do it?
It might be an interesting thing to see what the appraised value is.
Yeah,
It's always different, the actual market value. But yeah.
Very true. Yeah.
I wanted to mention here as we get closer towards the end of our time today, you do today have, again, I affectionately call it the biggest little studio in the world.
Yes.
And you have this core group of students that keep coming, and I mean, your knowledge and your belief and your background is truly a gift in that studio, and to the town that you teach in. And to me, that's remarkable that you've maintained that commitment all this time over the years. And every day you got people coming in, and I know you mentioned that Saturday's class was packed.
Yes.
It was one of your biggest classes. And, it must feel good to know that people are coming and that you're helping them have their breakthroughs, perhaps like your breakthroughs.
Yeah, I'm very honored to do that. I'm very honored to be the person to do that. In that vein, I'd like to say that, yes, this is my third studio. And like I said, the first one was just, I got referrals. People referred to me, doctors. And then the second one, of course, I bought that studio from someone else. This is the first one that I've actually built one student at a time. So those students are all very precious to me. And getting to know them and hearing, why they're coming to yoga, I can relate. I mean, I've had some emotional, issues. I've had to curve my appetite for non-healthy beverages. I've spent a lot of time in chiropractors where I felt like Humpty Dumpty, I got to put myself back together again. I've experienced a lot of sadness. I've also had some knee issues, over the years that I've cured or healed through yoga. I've had some carpal tunnel syndrome, that I've healed, and dislocated shoulders, so I wouldn't say everything that they come in with I've experienced, but a lot of it. And I feel like regardless of the pain, the what's behind it, I think we all share, the what's behind the pain, or how our emotional state, behind whatever pain it is. We're all human. I think we all can share, we can relate, we can sympathize and empathize and have compassion for.
Sure.
So I get it.
So what would you say, oftentimes somebody that hasn't tried yoga, and maybe more so with hot yoga, is that there's a little bit of fear about coming in. They're not quite sure whether people are going to look at them, or whether it's too hot, or whether it's too hard. How would you perhaps encourage that wannabe student, never done yoga before student, walk into a yoga studio anywhere in the world? How would you help them do that? Or what would you say, that breakthrough?
I think one of the things that stops us from coming in is expectations of themselves. They used to be strong and they don't feel strong, or maybe they used to be in shape and they're not in shape, or they don't feel like they're in shape. I think the expectations that we put on ourselves to be what we're not, or what we used to be, really. I find that more than anything, that people or students, including me, even when I first started, because I came from a gymnastics background, so if I couldn't do that again, well, why even bother? So I think it's the expectation. So if I would say anything, drop the expectations, open the mind, drop the heart, don't have any expectations of yourself. And someone may look at you, but not for very long, because yoga is difficult, and it's really all you can muster just to kind of stay in your own center. So
Sure.
You're always going to look around and see who's in the room. We're building a community here, and we're going to see ourselves in these people. So it's good to look around, and you're probably going to know somebody, which is then even better. And if you don't, then you're going to meet people, you know, so, but don't be scared, let go of the expectations, and you can do this.
Yeah.
You know, yoga's for everybody.
Yeah. Now, without necessarily naming names,
Okay.
is there a student that pops into your mind, either a current student at your studio or maybe a past student that started coming and they maybe had multiple challenges emotionally or physically, maybe things that you didn't even know that the yoga could help, that somehow their life has changed today as a result of coming or doing yoga?
Yeah, so without naming names, you know, I've had this studio for 3 years now, and it's building. So I guess the person that I'm visualizing is actually from my old studio. But you know, I witness student coming in eager. A lot of those students will ask to help you. Can I clean mirrors for you? You know, so you kind of can, you know, they'll start out by wanting to be part of it, you know, and then they want to teach. And, you know, so some of those students are on their own studios now in Orange County. So, you know, some of the ones that just started as students, and then I worked with them, and you know, they're owning their own studios. So
Yeah.
I've seen tremendous changes mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually,
Yeah.
all over the board, all across the board.
Well, I know some of the students or some of the people that go to your studio, and I know some of them have really overcome a lot, even though they came in with that fear. And you can see the change pretty quickly.
Oh, yeah.
Begin to happen.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
You know, that breakthrough, that lightening up, that opening up, that shoulder injury, you know, that old injury is going away, or that I don't feel as stressful. I don't yell at my husband or wife as much. And, you know, all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, it really goes deep.
It really does go deep. And I think they and just like me too, they can't believe they've done it. You know, they get so excited, you know. So you go through that kind of euphoric feeling, you know, you're very excited that you know, got in there. That's half the battle is just getting here, you know. So that I think, you know, we go through that, and then, you know, you feel the results immediately. But then after even a few weeks, a month, sometimes less, you start to see those results, you know. So a student that's on their, you know, their introductory special, you know, can very well see results in 30 days, you know. And so, yes, I hear all those stories, you know, they change physically.
Yeah. And I know sometimes with new students, I mean, they may find some of those immediate results, but then think, well, this isn't going to help for my hip or my back or whatever, and they quit coming, so they don't get the benefit that they could if they continue to come. So I know one of the things with new students, I mean, it's important. I mean, some of the stuff that you moved through took a couple of years to move through.
Yeah, well, I always feel like the yoga gives you what you need, not necessarily what you want, right? So also, I think if we can just kind of watch the mindset about, I mentioned expectations, but also fixing yourself. You know, yes, we want to heal our shoulder, we want to, you know, but in our knees and our hips and our back especially, you know, everybody has backaches, you know, but it's a process, you know. And one of the very first thing I learned in Bikram Yoga is to trust the process, you know. So if I could instill that in everybody that walks in the door, that would be a blessing for me. And take away the sense of urgency. Just take away the sense of urgency. You know, you may come in for your shoulder, but you may get stronger knees before your shoulder heal, you know. So I think the yoga can work magic, and it's gonna take care of the places, you know, one at a time. We can't come in and fix all these things, but it will definitely give you, you know, what you need at that time. So just be open, you know, in the words of both of our teacher, Emmy, you know, be consistent and persistent.
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and trust the process. I mean, these are the things we learned, Michael, and they're still true. They were true then, they're true now.
Yeah. Absolutely.
You know.
So as we wrap up the show, is there like briefly maybe a couple of other thoughts or ideas that you have about yoga that could particularly help a new student or that's just come into yoga, or perhaps somebody, again, that hasn't quite come? Just briefly, you know, maybe a couple of thoughts or ideas.
So if you're a new student and you want to come take a yoga class, the first thing I would do is go to the website, read, see what's going on. Okay, read what's going on, and take all the tips, like come to class hydrated, come early, you know, meet the teacher, you know, get familiar with the facilities, you know. I would say that be prepared, you know, prepare yourself for a life-changing experience, because I think all yoga is absolutely life-changing. I don't care who you are, you know, even if you, I always feel like yoga, even if a student doesn't come back, they never forget it. You know, I mean, it's really a light bulb of it's a study of yourself. So there's a lot that can be revealed even in that first class. So just come with an open heart, an open mind, drop the expectations, you know, read the website, give us a call, you know, call your studio, you know, ask questions, you know, they're there to help. We're here to help. You know, we've all been there. We've all had our first class, you know, so.
Now, I want to come back to your website. It's hotyogastudio.com.
Yeah.
So if somebody wants to find out more information about your studio, or perhaps contact you, they can do that through hotyogastudio.com. Or if they live in this area particularly, they could check out your classes there and your schedule and everything from right there, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, so we have flyers on the window. We have, you know, we have Facebook. We have an Instagram account. You know, we have our website, and I'm always here. You know, an hour before class, an hour after class. You know, and we have a class every day. Yeah, or give us a call. You know.
One of the best things about you as a teacher and knowing you is that you're very much wanting to be of service and to help to all the students and to help nurture them along the way. And that's an attribute that you have that I've always admired.
Well, thank you, Michael. Yeah, I mean, I guess it maybe at some point I felt like it was an obligation, you know, that I did. I really felt like it was an obligation to let people know. And now it's a purpose, you know, it's just in me, you know, it's my favorite subject. Yeah. You know, it's my favorite subject. I love talking about it. I love talking about my experience, other people's experience. It's a never-ending subject.
Yeah.
As you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's time to wrap up. Don't go anywhere though, so we can chat for a minute once we're done here.
Okay.
But again, we've been with Eva Vidal, one of the most talented, longest running not only Bikram Yoga teachers, one of the original Bikram Yoga teachers in the world, but one of the most long-running, lasting yoga teachers, period, anywhere. Well-trained in a lot of depth. So check her website out at hotyogastudio.com, or go to her Facebook page. It's also Hot Yoga Studio on Facebook. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Great. And you know, somewhere on this page, there's probably a link to this book, which was #1 in yoga, stress, and recovery. And you can go in and you can get a free book. I just asked you to pay a little bit of shipping, but you also get the free ebook right away, so you can download it and read it right away. And it's got some inspirational stuff in there about yoga. So thank you again, Eva, for being here. I would love to have you back sometime in the future to talk perhaps more in depth. Are you willing to do that?
I'm willing to do it, Michael. Thank you so much. It's been an honor.
Yeah, great.
I love talking to you.
Okay, and hold on, and we'll wrap it up. And again, this is Michael Harris with Eva Vidal on Falling Up Radio, and talk to you guys soon.